Brian, as I was prepping for our conversation today, I started taking some notes on your career path, and I realized quickly I'm not going to be able to do this justice from the Navy to Freddie to the CFPB, and I'm going to stop there because your path goes deeper with multiple lenders, and this is all before we even get to the mortgage technology space that you're focused on today. Tell us about how you migrated from the Navy into the mortgage industry, and kind of how your career has evolved and flowed over the years.
Yeah, it's been an interesting path and journey to get here, and I consider myself extremely fortunate. Very, very fortunate. I've met and had the opportunity to work with some great people that have helped kind of my career move along. But it's interesting. It started, so I was stationed in Hawaii in the Navy. I did my last 4 years of the Navy station at Pearl Harbor. Was an extra in the filming of the movie Pearl Harbor. Met people that got me to volunteer at the Sony Open, which is a golf tournament, because of the Navy and everything like that. Met some friends that eventually led me to meeting people in the mortgage industry that owned a mortgage company. And I remembered back when I bought my very first house at 22 years old, I think. And the experience that I had with my real estate agent, my mortgage lender, and how kind of lost I felt during that entire process. Being in Hawaii and being in the Navy, I was getting out, and I was like, I've got to find a job that keeps me in Hawaii, right? Keeps me on the island. My background in the Navy was nuclear engineering. And so not a lot of jobs in Hawaii for a nuclear engineer. And so when I met these guys in the mortgage industry and thinking back on it, my another degree in finance, I was like, I can do this. I love math. This is something that I could be passionate about and getting in and helping people. And so I'm probably one of the very few people that got into the mortgage space intentionally, right? Like I wanted to get into the mortgage space and I wanted to be a loan officer. So, I started.
Well, you're definitely not the only one who said I was getting a mortgage and the process was painful. Like that story. I mean, it's like it's the mortgage tech founder story.
Oh, it is. It is. So many people, they're like, we can do it so much better. And so, I saw this as kind of a double opportunity and to basically stay in Hawaii. And so I started as a loan officer for a mortgage bank, Colorado Federal Savings Bank, in Hawaii, and ended up leaving Hawaii for various reasons. Moved here to Maryland and continued working for the mortgage bank, doing various jobs within the mortgage bank. The owner of the mortgage bank owned an LOS tech firm, PC Lender. Started working doing that. Met people through conferences and user groups at Freddie Mac. Got recruited to go to Freddie Mac in order to work on Loan Prospector and the underwriting engine. Worked with people at Freddie Mac that eventually landed at my next company, Overture Technologies. Recruited me to go to Overture. From Overture, the person that hired me at Overture, Peter Carroll, was one of the co-founders there. Left Overture to go to this new federal government startup called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I ended up leaving Overture. Pete called me up and was like, hey, we could use some industry expertise at the CFPB. So that's kind of how I got the transition, from mortgage lending, mortgage technology to now a federal regulator, running the regulatory implementation group along with Lisa Applegate. And, that really kind of kicked off and I think skyrocketed my career to help me get to where I am today. And so that was really, I think, the catalyst was being able to get into the CFPB, working in the mortgage markets, and that liaison between industry and the regulatory environment.
I was going back through some of our coverage from the early mid 2010s, and I came across an article that mentioned you, and it said Brian Webster, who played a critical role in development of several key policies at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, including the Truth in Lending RESPA integrated disclosure forms, is leaving the CFPB for Wells Fargo. So I guess this was the announcement article. But talk about like what mark do you think you left on the CFPB, or like where is there a single like accomplishment or experience or anything that like you look back upon that said that this was defining?
Oh my God, there's several, but probably the most impactful actions that we're taking are ones that industry never saw or never had any idea that was going on. So I think I did as much good keeping things coming out of the Bureau than helping items actually leaving the Bureau. For instance, ideas that were coming up that, are well intended from a federal regulator from the perspective of consumer financial protection, but playing a role to kind of explain the impact. Like, if you go down this path, here is what's going to actually happen in the industry, and playing a role of explaining the negative impacts and consequences that are going to occur, and being able to, be in the middle of the sausage making to have those conversations before it even comes out, to me is probably personally is going to be the biggest accomplishments. But going back, just establishing the engagement and the relationship that a federal regulator can have with the industry, with their regulated entities, and the fact that conversations are good, conversations are beneficial, and that those are needed, two-way discussions, so that those that are making the laws can understand what's happened, what impacts the laws are going to have, what unintended consequences, but also, being able to communicate back to my industry colleagues that if you want to see change, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to lobby, how you need to advocate. This is a story that you need to tell in order to convince those that are making the laws that here's the direction that we both need to go down together in order to reach that common end goal, which is, a highly functional, compliant industry that's delivering products and financial services to the consumer, at a fair market value, and in a responsible and reliant way. The coming out with the Title 14 rules and the kind of the training and the information that we were able to communicate, establishing, the regulatory work groups of, regular check-ins with the industry as they're going through the implementation of these rules, being able to pull those questions back in, get answers, and get it back to them in a timely manner so that we can continue to support the implementation of all of these regulations. TRID, the Truth in Lending RESPA Integrated Disclosure Act, was probably the biggest regulatory change the industry has gone through. And, being able to be there kind of lockstep with them to help through this extremely difficult time, is probably the one thing that I look back on the fondest as it relates to really kind of, the impact and the public impact that we were able to have, all of us, that were kind of working on that, inside the CFPB during that time frame.
It's a complicated relationship between industry participants and a regulator, especially a new regulatory body. And I mean, it sounds like what you're alluding to is like some of the things that were public facing or industry facing were impactful, but potentially not as impactful as the things that didn't happen. And it had the industry having a voice and the CFPB having some industry folks from industry like yourself helped develop a framework, and that was not as punitive as it could have been if we were just looking at policymakers, looking at the industry from the outside.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can remember having conversations because, not only within the markets division, not only do we focus on the regulatory implementation, right, of here's the rules, this is what you need to do in order to implement. We were, elbows deep in the sausage making, right, and development. The proposed rule for TRID had already been out when I joined the Bureau, but I was there in the final rulemaking and really being able to, you know, get it to the point that it was at when it was released, even though industry probably wasn't, super happy with it, and it probably could have been better. But, I do honestly feel like that we got it to the best place that we could. But we're also engaged in supervision and enforcement in the fair lending groups, right? Of the kind of the quote unquote police force of the regulatory body, you know, being kind of that advisor into that group. I took my role in separation of duties very seriously. It's because I still wanted to be able to go out and engage directly with industry partners and hear from them, and them to be honest and have honest conversations with me and take that information back inside the Bureau when it related to policy making, to ensure that we're making the right policy decisions and responsible policy decisions. I never, ever, ever, ever would take any of that information over to kind of the policing force and say, hey, guess what? Clayton's doing over here, what he told me in confidence, right? You should go talk to him. Never would do that, because then it would completely demolish the trust and faith that I was able to establish with across the industry. But being that advisor in the supervision roles would be, yes, what the lender is telling you is true. That is accurate. That is the truth. And being able to kind of confirm practices, confirm business reasons, confirm technology limitations that supervised entities were explaining back into the regulator, to get them to understand that this is actually how the business operates. This is how it works. This is how they're dependent upon technology vendors, and how the whole infrastructure works, to really show them that everyone is not breaking the law on purpose, and everyone is not nefarious in what they're trying to do, and everyone's not trying to cheat consumers, and really kind of providing that kind of litmus test back into the regulatory body of it, to really highlight the fact that there's a lot of great people out there. There's a lot of strong people out there that are out here doing this for the right reasons, and doing it correctly and legally and in compliance. A few bad apples, don't need to kind of ruin the whole bushel, as the saying goes.
So at this point in your career, it doesn't sound like you've ever had to sharpen up the resume and go hunt for a job. Your network has helped pull you forward, and you've been tapped for new opportunities. So how did the transition from the Bureau back into industry happen, and what were you looking for in that next step, or what was the inflection point that encouraged you that it was time to take a step forward?
So the counterpart that I had at Wells Fargo, a gentleman, Raghu Kakamanu, who is brilliant, love him to death, was basically the industry liaison inside Wells Fargo that I worked with very closely at CFPB. He took a new role inside Wells Fargo, which opened up basically that job. And eventually that's the job that I ended up taking at Wells Fargo. Raghu's boss basically hounded me for about 6 months before I finally said yes. Kind of like my high school girlfriend. She finally said yes to the prom after lots of begging, I guess. But the catalyst really for me to make the decision to leave the Bureau, I loved almost every day of what I did at the Bureau. But a majority of the mortgage rulemaking was coming to an end. TRID was going into effect on, October 3rd, 2015. The HMDA rulemaking was in the final stages. I'd worked very closely with the team internally to try to, get that into a strong position. And so I saw the ability of innovation and impact that I could have on the industry inside CFPB was starting to slow down. It was starting to come to an end. And it was going to be moving more into kind of a maintenance mode, which is attractive for a lot of people. But when the opportunity, came across my desk to transition over to Wells, I thought it was just a good timing, right? The Bureau was moving less into this new innovative startup and becoming, a mature federal regulator. And, Wells was still doing a lot of great things at the time. And so I just thought it was the timing worked out perfectly to allow me to move over and to continue to have an impact on the industry at the time with the largest originator and largest lender in the market. And felt like if I was going to continue to have a positive impact in any type of role on industry, on policy and regulations, financial reform, on new innovative items that were hitting the industry like RON and e-closings, Wells Fargo gave me kind of an ideal platform to be able to do that from. And it was, for 4 years.
So you brought up the topic of Ron and e-closing. So let's fast forward a little bit to the role you play today, serving as president of NotaryCam. How did some of the learnings that you had from the CFPB and your opportunity to take those learnings and put them into action at Wells Fargo can influence your next few steps that paved the road to NotaryCam?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it really did. I mean, it really started at CFPB when we did the e-closing pilot, the Know Before You Owe initiative. I always joke that I remember when it started in a conversation in Director Cordray's office. He brought a few of us in there and asked the question, why is there a 2-inch stack of paperwork put in front of a consumer, at the closing table? And Director Cordray is a brilliant man. He has a very dry and intelligent sense of humor. And so when I responded that it's due to all of the federal regulations that we put onto the industry, he did not find it as humorous as I was hoping that he would. And so Brian then got the assignment from Director Cordray to figure out why. And that's really kind of where it started, the catalyst. Those that we engaged with would remember we called it whack the stack. That was the effort that we went through to try to figure out how to reduce the number of documents in the closing stack. And, we learned
Paper companies, the doc storage companies loved you.
Oh, I'm sure they did. I joke. So that was the time I started selling all of my stock in Dunder Mifflin. But what we learned, and this carries forward to today in so many different aspects, but what we learned was, one, the federal government really didn't control that many documents in the closing package, right? There's not that many promulgated forms, right? The LE, the CD, type of things, but a majority of the documents that you see in a closing package or any type of loan package aren't dictated by federal government or necessarily state regulations. Some of them are, but not all of them. And so we started thinking about, what is it that we're trying to solve for? We're trying to solve for, the amount of information that's being delivered to a consumer at the closing table all at once. Think of a better way of delivering information to a consumer. Documents typically exist because a law, a rule, a regulation says that you, lender, must give this information to a consumer. And so the lender prints it on a piece of paper and hands it to a consumer and makes them sign it, not because they have to, but because if they need to prove that they did that in the future, they have it in their hand. So coming from Freddie Mac, coming from Overture, and moving kind of that digital application online in the beginning of the process, why can't we do it towards the end of the process? And so going through this e-closing pilot really began to learn all of the challenges related to closing, pulling many different players together all at once to try to reach this one moment in time. The coordination of 5 different entities to bring all the information together, to give to a closing agent, to get to a consumer at the signing table. So that's really kind of where, my passion started for coming up with a better way. We can do this through digital closings. Why can't we? I e-sign everything from my life insurance policies to paying for my groceries at the grocery store. There's got to be a way to apply some of that capability into this more complex, mortgage space, which I've been working towards ever since, right? Implemented digital mortgage program at Wells Fargo, kicked off purchasing e-mortgages and e-notes through correspondent retail, did it at Freedom. And so saw what it took inside a lender, saw what it took with all of our partners from the technology providers, but also in the title and settlement space, and what they need to be able to do and bring to the table in order to help facilitate and make this e-closing a success. So when the opportunity to come over to NotaryCam presented itself, to me, it was like the culmination of everything that I've been working towards and the ideas and philosophies that I've been trying to push in order to advance electronic closing adoption. What I mean by that is traditionally it's been lender driven. It's the lender's docs, it's the lender's loan. I've been looking at it a little bit differently in the fact that the title companies closes the transaction. It's their pen and their paper. They're the ones sitting with the consumer at the table. They're the ones that are coordinating all of the components to come together at the very end. Why can't we empower the title and closing community to bring this technology to bear and empower them to want to deliver this new type of service, this e-close service? And Stuart has kind of, adopted that methodology and that thought process. I had the conversation when I was at Wells back in 2015 with Stuart about going down this path and this approach. We did it at Wells. It was a success. We're doing it Freedom. Hasn't really gotten off the ground since I left, but there's a lot of reasons for that. But, the approach is proven to be successful, and being able to come to NotaryCam and be a part of Stuart to really kind of take that approach and deliver it into the title and settlement community and to empower them to improve their toolbox so that they can go to their lender customers and say, I can be your digital closing solution for you. I think that's going to be kind of a strong way to improve adoption, especially, through this year as lenders and all organizations are looking to, cut costs and improve some efficiencies in their operations.
So if we rewind to that period of time when you're at the CFPB in another universe, an alternate storyline, Rick Triola is founding NotaryCam in 2014 and beginning the path of building an on-demand online notary service, and had the advantages of going through the NAR-Reach program and access to the Second Century Ventures cohort. So how did that path proceed over the 6 years from 2014 to 2020, ultimately when Stuart acquired the business? And I know this all precedes you, but I imagine you get a little bit of backstory as you step into your role as president.
Yeah, and I've known Rick since he really kind of started NotaryCam, and over the years, and especially after coming on board, he never let me forget the fact that NotaryCam tried to get into the CFPB's e-closing pilot, and we wouldn't let them in. And the only reason was we want to focus on the little piece around just getting a signature and, not taking on the notarization laws and the remote notarization laws and the complexities associated with that. We were a federal government agency that had very little bandwidth to understand the complexities of that. So, yeah, he didn't let me forget that. So Rick, before NotaryCam, he had a company called Settleware, which is basically like an e-sign service as well. And so when the Ron laws were passed, I think in 2011, he saw an opportunity to really kind of take this to the next level and began pursuing that. While he had success in real estate and mortgage, his primary focus was outside of mortgage, right? Like NotaryCam, half of our business is non-real estate. Our largest customer is non-real estate. And so that, I think, helped him grow the organization and grow it kind of organically, right? He was part of some of these great kind of incubator labs and great organizations to kind of help him grow the business. But he didn't go out and get VC money and private equity money and funding and be able to hire 500 people. He kind of did it by the bootstraps, which a lot of respect for what Rick was able to accomplish. And so he just the slow churn of just going through one customer at a time and delivering high quality of service, and that's really kind of what they focused on. NotaryCam is one of the very few Ron vendors in the space that majority of them license software, but we also provide a full notary service. So we have a pool of licensed notaries that you send us your transaction and we'll close it via Ron for you. So that kind of unique business model allowed him to really kind of get into different organizations, and then slowly moving as kind of a fast follower through real estate and gaining, some title companies, gaining some lenders under his belt to really kind of grow the organization. Stuart actually approached him. So Rick and, the NotaryCam leadership team had been kind of contemplating, going to get some funding and finding some big partners and kind of interviewed with some larger investors. But, when Rick tells the story, none of it really kind of felt right. None of it felt like it was the right home for NotaryCam and kind of the philosophy that he had built, the people that he had brought on board. And so when the opportunity with Stuart came on board, he said it kind of felt like home, right? Stuart's mentality of they've acquired numerous companies, right? I think 17 in the past 2 years, or 18 or something like that. And really taking a very strategic approach of stitching these companies together and bringing NotaryCam in, for the end piece for the closing and being on the Ron solution, really kind of fit into that overall strategy. And it was a very logical acquisition for Stuart. And Rick saw the opportunity there. And so it's just a great fit. And, and it brings us into an organization where, we're able to work with our, channel partners across Stuart in direct operations, agency operations, Stuart Lender Services, to really kind of take this product and technology out through all of those clients, including, our sister companies like with Informative Research and Cloud Verga, certified and the appraisal, PropTech and USA Appraisals, to be able to deliver that kind of comprehensive solution. And so, he just kind of struggled and churned along and building it brick by brick. And, coming into the Stewart family, and was able to kind of get everything kind of situated to the point where he's like, I think I'm going to actually enjoy my retirement, enjoy the fruits of my labor. And so, a colleague of mine within Stewart approached me and kind of the spring of 2022 and said, we might have an opening that we think that you would be a good fit for. Would you be interested? So that kind of kicked off the journey and got me started at NotaryCam in August of this past year.
That's excellent. So I thought the phrase you used on stitched together with kind of the broader Stewart acquired company group was interesting. And I, as a relatively M&A focused operator, every deal has a little bit of a different flavor, but you have to think about how does this fit into the overall business strategy? Is it a new product? Is it a new division? Is it a feature? And how does that impact the way we integrate the team and business operations? How would you categorize the way that you work with, or how would you like further define that stitched together approach with CloudVerga and informative research and the broader Stewart business?
It's been very, very strategic. So, Stewart, Fred Epperson, the CEO, is very pragmatic in his approach in acquiring, and Brad Rayl, my boss, is big into this process of bringing the right components together. And it's not just bringing a component in to place it into an ecosystem as a product offering, right, to fill in a gap. It's also, how can I take that product offering either through their technology, through their process, through their people, and expand it into other areas of the business? And I think this is where you're going, because, we're just one component. We provide remote notarization services, right? And so quickly after NotaryCam coming into it, there's another acquisition that Stewart made called Signature Closers. They're a mobile notary network. And so Stewart created this initiative that we call Remote Choice. And Remote Choice allows a user to basically pick how do they want to close their transaction. Do they want to come into a Stewart office? Do they want to have it be a mail away? Do they want a mobile notary to show up through Signature Closers? Do they want to come online and do it remotely through NotaryCam? And so, very quickly, we've been able to kind of piece some of these things, technologies and companies together to create these new offerings. When it comes to kind of CloudVerga, so Stewart has taken CloudVerga's technology to deliver some B2C components and B2B portals for their various kind of title divisions. We also see that as an opportunity to kind of expand the NotaryCam product. So again, we are that remote notarization component, right? We tie into other technology vendors and other partners like a DocMagic and DocuTech and so on and so forth, that we are a supplement to their kind of overall e-closing solution. But as we've been working closely with CloudVerga, we're now bringing kind of that component into CloudVerga's product offering to supplement their tool. But we're also bringing CloudVerga capabilities into NotaryCam to actually expand the NotaryCam product offering to go beyond and grow just more than just the remote notarization services. So being able to provide eNote generation and eVault connectivity and electronic closings, e-sign capabilities for the borrower to deliver kind of a product and service that our customers are asking for. And so it's been extremely complementary, right? Both ways, right? So we're helping build out CloudVerga. They're helping build us out with informative research, on the verification components. We're looking at ways of leveraging their capabilities in verification waterfalls for when consumers are coming into our application. Now, do those necessarily meet the state and regulatory requirements for MFA and borrower identification? In some states, yes. Most states, no. But it's a way that we're able to leverage kind of partner companies and their technology to supplement what we're able to deliver to our customers. So it's been a fantastic, relationship. I've been here 6 months, but we've already made some great progress. And in other organizations that I've been in that have had these type of acquisitions and mergers, I've never been in an organization that has been so seamless and has been complementary to each other in a way that we've been able to make such progress in such a very small amount of time.
with such a complementary product suite and capability suite and still being able to operate seamlessly, is there anything you've learned about the business functions and the team members that you're dedicated to maintaining inside of the NotaryCam business unit versus like shared services you might have with other Stewart businesses? And I'll share, like, I'm thinking about that from my vantage point. We acquired Altus Research in December, and we're building toward two distinct sales organizations and two distinct like product and dev teams. And it's like, I'd be lying if I wasn't saying, like, is there a future where we have a singular like dev and product infrastructure, or does it make sense to maintain dedicated teams that are focused on a specific product, but encouraging collaboration and encouraging seamless building? So I'm curious what you've kind of learned about the functions that you think are incredibly important to keep distinct inside of your business unit.
Have you been talking to my boss lately? Because these are very conversations that have been going on just the past 2 weeks, and so it's a very timely conversation. So
no, I hope it comes across. These are the things I'm thinking about.
This is fantastic, yeah. And so it's a great question, because it's something that we are focused on to ensure, one, that we take advantage of economies of scale, right, in the shared services as much as we can without giving up our independence and our own identity, right? So like HR, accounting, finance, legal, all of that stuff we've rolled into Stewart, right? And so that's been a huge benefit of having those capabilities being provided by Stewart, right? Takes it off of our kind of plate, and I don't have to worry about it. Product and technology, as you're talking about this, so specifically like with CloudVerge and Informative Research, that have very kind of mature and developed dev teams and product management teams and philosophies, we see advantages there, at least from management and the philosophy of how to manage product, how to develop product, and how to roll out and deploy product. So we're balancing of how much of that can we combine, right? And so to your question about distinct products or shared services when product management, the thought process that we're having is, how much can we roll up into kind of a single shared services organization around development product management, so that you're getting a single focus and a single process, where you begin to get the separation is in the distinct teams that are delivering a specific product, right? And so you keep the separation down in the individual products, but it rolls back up into a larger part of the organization, so that you can have, consistency in methodologies of building, developing, and deploying, as opposed to everybody's doing it their own way, right? Because what that does is it gives us the ability to move back and forth and to take advantage of, like, CloudVerge has got some resources that we can grab or we can push over there in the ebb and flow of development cycles. Whereas if we were completely independent, it wouldn't give us that flexibility. So it's kind of the approach that we want to get to. And again, this has been very, early stages of the conversation, but, ideally, getting to that point, I think would be advantageous for everybody. As far as keeping our identity and what is unique, I think our customer service and what's unique to us is around our notary operations and our notary pool and the notary services that we're delivering to our customers. That's unique. We're not going to move that anywhere. We can't combine that with anybody else because no one else does that. So that's very distinct kind of NotaryCam, and it's only going to be NotaryCam and always going to be NotaryCam. But everywhere else that we're able to combine and share, I'm very much into that approach, because if I can get someone else to pay for it, I'd be happy to have someone else pay for it when it comes to some of those costs.
So is there anything you've kind of learned about prophesizing like the NotaryCam capabilities or prophesizing e-closing and remote online notarization kind of within Stewart. So like being part of a larger traditional title company who is, market facing with a large percentage of the lenders and real estate brokers and agents across the country. How do you leverage the parent organization, the broader team from like Stewart Title to informative research to Cloud Virga? Like, how do you leverage your partners and other business unit leaders to prophesize the story and ensure consistency across the organization?
So, twofold, right? From a marketing perspective, developing kind of the common theme around Stewart and Stewart's digital framework that they are able to deliver not only directly to their customers, to their lender customers, but also their title agent customers through our agency business in Terra. So, and again, it goes back to kind of stitching all of that together, right? Stitching it to the point where, we can bring all of this together, but they're also independent services. We've had our first success. We signed our first contract in December where a client basically signed a contract with everything. The entire framework, they signed up. They signed up with Cloud Virga. They signed up with information research. They signed up with our Stewart Valuation Intelligence. We were not yet at the table, so they didn't sign up with NotaryCam. And so I didn't let Marvin forget that. But, it is working. So kind of creating that common theme and that digital framework of Stewart, being able to take it to market is really helping kind of, as you said, prophesize that across the organization. I'm lucky that I don't need to sell the idea to anyone within Stewart. They wouldn't have bought NotaryCam if they didn't believe in the idea. So that's a battle I don't have to fight. The other areas of advantage that I have within Stewart is every single sell side transaction should be done via Ron. That's a no-brainer, right? And so going out to our direct operations and like, why are you not using us, at least for this part of the transaction? That's something that very focused on starting at the top of the house and getting down through all of our group vice presidents to getting that message out to the direct operations. The other advantage that we're getting that we're able to partner with from Stewart is through our Stewart Lender Services, so SLS. That means I don't necessarily need a sales team to go after lender business. I have the Stewart Lender Services sales team, and arming them with information related to NotaryCam, arming them with information related to Cloud Virga, informative research, and all of the tools that they basically have in their back pocket to sell Stewart to a lender is part of the package that we are delivering up and empowering the sales team. So that's, to me, that's a big advantage. And again, all of these little things added up to, painting the picture of why I wanted to come here and take on this role is because I saw all of these tools sitting in front of us to be able to take advantage of, right? So I don't need to focus on the lender business. I've got people that are doing that for us. I can go out and I can focus on the title agent business. I can focus on the servicing business, the loss mitigation business. So other areas that Stewart isn't necessarily a strong player in is where we can focus, and I can, leverage my Stewart partners from a sales perspective in order to focus on the areas that they have strong inroads and strong contacts and relationships with. Because the last thing I want to do is have 4 different salespeople from all within the same parent organization hitting up a single lender trying to sell different services, right? That's more damaging than beneficial. So consolidating that through a single point of contact, a single representative that can help bring all of us together into a single prospect is kind of the approach that we're taking. And, we already have a couple of big wins associated with that, this early on.
So does that mean you'll have a single account director or senior account exec, whatever the title is, who manages a lender relationship, but there might be an SME or an expert from the different business units who can plug in and support different parts of the conversation? Because it's got to be challenging for the relationship owner, the account director, to carry the full expertise of the product suite from business end to end.
Yeah, I mean that's just not fair to the account owner, right? I've had a role where I was the account owner, right? And I, no matter how much I wanted to, there's no way that you can know it all. But yeah, so that's the approach, and it's it's a single person that's going to own the relationship, and their job is to make sure that they bring the right experts to the table, regardless of the conversation, whether we're trying to win new business, grow existing business, or just maintaining the relationship from a customer service perspective, right? And so, our customer service team, we've started aligning kind of their lender customers and our direct lender customers to those that align with Stewart lender accounts, to kind of start moving in that direction, so that, let's say, Natalie, that's supporting a Webster bank, is working through George that owns the relationship for Stewart, as opposed to hitting them up directly, right? So that's the exact approach that we're taking.
If you're selling to Webster Bank, you got to bring in Brian Webster to help facilitate the conversation.
And I'm happy to join. So,
Brian, thank you so much for your time today. I could go on for hours. I feel like there's so much we didn't get into, but that just might open the door for us to do this again.
I'd love to. And as you can tell, Clayton, I like the gab and like to talk. So happy to. And I'm very honored and privileged to be invited to do this. And so I've always had tons of respect for HousingWire and for you and what you guys do, and how you deliver information, and the information that you are delivering into the industry, and the benefits that you bring. And so I love the partnership, and happy to do it anytime you want.
And I appreciate it. And it was one of the first episodes in a while we didn't spend a lot of time talking about the housing market, which maybe is a good thing right now. But I wish you luck and momentum and success as you charge into 2023. Thank you, Brian.
I really appreciate that, Clayton. Thank you very much.